I think that Japanese furry enjoy kemono as a kind of entertainment, and there is less focus on the idea of the persona, which is often seen in the West. They tend to move or develop their characters rather than expressing themselves. Basically, they are pursuing the image they want to become rather than their true self.
Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Fox and Burger Podcast, where we bring you closer to the Asian furry fandom, one episode at a time. I'm Michael the Matcha Fox.
And I'm Burger.
And today we're returning to Japan to talk with Jun, Casey, and Geppei, all of whom help organize Osaka's own furry convention, Osaka Furry Fun Festa, among other things.
In this episode, we talked about the history of Japanese fur cons, and then we took a dive into Japanese furry culture and how it interacted with the West. In addition, we learned some fine cuisine and destinations as recommended by Osakan locals to any eager furries wanting to visit.
We're excited to take a trip to Osaka, so sit back and enjoy our second trip to Japan. Okay, welcome to the episode. Jun, Casey, and Geppei, welcome to the Fox and Burger Podcast. It's nice to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
I met Jun back in, 2018, I think, for JMoF. I forget which particular JMoF, but I know it was in 2018. I haven't had the honor of meeting Casey or Geppei yet. I've seen your suits before. For example, I've seen Duskin before, the Hong Kong fur, and I'm sure a lot of us have seen Geppei's animations before, so special thanks again for you guys for being on the podcast.
Yeah, I really like Geppei's animations too. I haven't seen too many, but the ones that I have seen are really good. I really like them.
ありがとうございます。
Well, let's go ahead and begin the podcast as always. The order of responses will be like this. So Jun will respond first, then Casey, then Geppei, and then Casey's going to translate for Geppei because Geppei can't speak English. I do want to thank Casey again for helping us translate, and thank you, Jun, for helping us translate as well. So our first question is this. Describe your persona and how you joined the furry fandom.
My first name is a wolf with straw hat. So when I was a university student, I found a link collection of furry fandom and extension of fursuit on the internet. This site is called Kemono Search. After that, I made my own fursuit and participated in a furry convention in Japan. This is how I got into fandom. But the trigger of becoming a furry for me was a computer game that my cousin gave me. So when I was elementary school student, this game was called A Shining Force, produced by Sega. It was a classic Japanese RPG, but it was not so popular like the Dragon Quest series. In this game, some furry characters are featured, like a werewolf, so I like this game.
I've heard a little bit of the Shining Force games. I did not remember if there were any furry characters in it, but there are some older RPG games that I remember. What was it? Breath of Mana?
Mm-hmm.
That one has a werewolf character in it too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So then after playing those games, you tried to create art with that, right?
Yes, I tried to write and draw my own character. Of course, it was werewolf. In those days, I was liking and drawing pictures. But now, so I don't have time to draw a picture because I'm busy. Yeah.
Yeah, you are more busy with other things in the furry fandom, right?
Yeah, so recently, I sometimes join the first greeting activities. So, played with small children, say hello to the tourists in the sightseeing place like a hot spring in Japan or a shopping mall.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and now I simply help the first meetup event. I worked as a volunteer staff. Casey and Geppei's organizer of a furry event in Osaka.
Mm-hmm.
So I sometimes help out them.
All right, yeah. And then KC, can you tell us about your persona and how you joined?
My persona is a dog named Jukyo. I joined Furry Fandom because of a website called Funk. I found this fandom in 2004 and began to expand my network with it. After that, I met Geppei and started to get in touch with fursuiting and its culture. Currently, I'm managing furry event and working as an artist.
All right, so you're managing events and working as an artist. That's what you said, right?
Yes, he's an artist and organizer of furry events in Osaka.
All right, yeah.
I had a quick question for Casey, actually. You mentioned that you found the fandom in 2004, and then you said you met Geppei afterwards. When did you meet Geppei? Like in 2005 or 2006 or?
ゲッペイさんといつ会いましたかって、2004年に
KC とあ、でも会社入って2年後ぐらいに飛ばされてきてるから、2010年なんじゃないの
2010年
?2010 年
2010.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So it's been a long time though. At least what, 12 years? You've known Geppei for 12 years if it's 2010.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And then finally, Geppei, you can tell us about your fursona and how you joined.
ちょっと日本語で失礼いたします。僕のファースナはシベリアオオカミの社長です。獣界隈に入った理由ですが、初めは高校の時にコミックマーケットに一人で行ったのがきっかけでした。その時は島も少なくて、ちょっと本を買って帰っただけだったんですが、でもその後ずっと何回も通っている間に、偶然誰でも参加できるっていう獣タウンのヒロさんのオフ会に参加して、そしてそのままハウルっていう合同誌に誘われて、そのままパーリーファンダムに入りました。現在ではイラストや、あと、あれですね、いろんな人の協力を経て、着ぐるみ工房と、あと、たまにイベントなどをやっております。
My first name is Shacho, a Siberian wolf. It's all started with comic market when I was a high school student. In those days, there were not many kemono doujinshis. At that time, I met Hiro, who a member of a certain kemono doujinshi group called Kemono Town, at an after party and was invited to draw for a joint magazines by chance. This is when I joined the fandom.
Kemono doujinshis, those would basically be furry fanzines or magazines created by artists that are fans of of furries, basically. Yeah.
I think they're closer to like comics, I feel, but I guess you could call them fanzines.
Yeah, that is true. All right, so because Casey and June, you mentioned furry events and managing events, tell us more about the event in Osaka. Tell us about the start of OFFF.
OFF is based on the event JMoF and Kemono Salon, Kansai Kemono Salon, before 2017. At that time, there was no big furry event in Osaka, and there was no chance for a lot of furries get together like at JMoF. In order to solve this problem, we started an event so that furry can interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, we established the furry convention OFF, which is a 2-day event.
Okay, and you said that JMoF and Kansai Kemono, those were before 2017, so those were predecessors?
Yes. So we organized JMoF and Kansai Kemono Salon several times a year before 2017. So before OFF was established.
Okay. Can you tell us some differences between those events and OFF?
Mostly the OFF is the same as any other furry event in Japan. Right? So someone enjoyed a first thing, chatting, playing a board game, or playing musical instrument, or show some their performances.
So you're saying that JMoF and Kansai Kemono Salon, you're saying that these two previous events were actually quite similar to OFF. Is that what you're saying? They're more similar than different.
More similar.
Okay.
Because they are both a predecessor of OFF.
I see. And I'm just really amazed. Like, I'm hearing all these responses up to now, and I just want to say I'm actually really amazed by, I guess, like how deep or how detailed the history of the Japanese furry fandom is. I also don't live in Japan, and I've only been to Japan once, but I've never heard of these events before. I've heard of OFF, obviously. I've heard of JMoF, but I've never heard of JMoF and Kansai Kimono Salon. And I'd love to get to know more about them later, maybe in another episode. But yeah, we'd like to move on to our next question. Was OFF sort of a reaction to JMoF in the sense that you wanted to establish a con that was catered towards furs in Osaka? Like, just to clarify, was that something you guys wanted to do?
Our first result experience of the event we have participated in. JMoF is not a deciding factor.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
I just know that it's really, really hard to get into JMoF. Like, it's really hard to book a hotel. I think that they often sell more tickets than they have hotel rooms. I guess for my personal interest, I'm kind of more interested in attending OFF right now. Because again, it's just really hard to get a hotel room at JMoF. It's such a big con now. But yeah, but thanks for the clarification.
So now that we know more about the origins of OFF, let's hear about the activities that they have at OFF. So can you tell us more about some of the activities that were held at OFF? Like, what can furries do at this event?
We had performance shows and creators booths and board game room and simple music session booths. We would like increase more booths where participants can easily stop by.
All right, sounds like a fun time.
I had a quick question I want to ask. My question is, how many attendees attended OFF in 2019? It was held in 2019, right?
I'm not sure. I asked Casey. ごめん、前回の参加者で何人ぐらいいました？
記憶だと何やったっけ ?600?
About 600.
Which is very sizable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Okay, thank you.
So then it seems like these are all activities that we have in Western conventions as well as just other conventions in Asia. But let's talk more about how an event like OFF compares to Western conventions. So, compared to Western cons and different kinds of events, what makes the event in Osaka, what makes it different?
The event we organize in the past we normally held in a single hall, like a sport hall.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, everyone can share in same space and time. People who make goods, draw pictures, wear fursuits, play music, enjoy their artwork or performance, and so on. They all can interact with each other in the same area in harmony.
Yeah. Being in the same area in harmony, that's always one of the best parts of coming to a social event like a furry convention. So I'm glad that everyone being able to be in the same space at the same time is good. Although, I would say in a Western convention, those kinds of rooms are separated because this is more inside of a hotel or inside a convention center where you can have those separated spaces from each other, even though everyone is still technically part of the same event in the same space. I guess my question to that would be, if you were to change that part of OFF, if you wanted to have some separation between some of the spaces, do you think that would be a good change to the event in Osaka?
In this time, board game room were in separated room, but other room is on same place. I think it would be good for us to see each other. So we believe that it's better to have it in one place in order to increase the number of connections with participants.
All right, yeah, I understand now. I kind of misunderstood and thought that everything was in one big space. And I was actually at a convention that was like that. It was Super Furry Fusion in China. I think a convention like that can be pretty fun, but I do worry about the noise and how crowded it can be if it's all in one big hall. But if it works for Osaka, then it seems like they're doing a pretty good job with their event.
I do have a question going back to JMoF. I know we touched upon this just a little bit, but I want to go back to JMoF because I feel that a lot of non-Japanese furries think about JMoF. They think about JMoF when they think about Japan. So my question is, like, how does OFF compare to JMoF?
We integrated it into single events so that attendees could enjoy the event in relaxed atmosphere. And then we kept in mind that the attendees were the start of the event.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, management team tried not to appear too much in front of attendees. So our policy is attendees first. So we should put in effort to keep the policy.
Yeah, I think that's a good policy to have, to put the attendees first and to make sure that the staff are not too apparent. I think there is something like that whenever I go to a convention in the West or somewhere in Asia. And I think we heard a little bit of that as well when we were talking with Ska and Decro. They wanted to have their attendees be entertained and be happy during the event as much as they could, if I'm remembering that right.
I think that's right. And I've also heard in offhand, like private conversations with JC, JC's main goal is to make sure the attendees are having a good time, to make sure we cater to their needs as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't in the episode, but it's just like private conversations. So shout out to JC.
Yeah, shout out to JC, shout out to Infernity. And then can you go ahead and tell us your favorite moments or memories from OFF?
It is when I can feel that participants enjoyed the events that I planned. For example, we planned an event which everyone dances the same dance, and the performance and spectacle. I believe that this project expressed the concept of sharing of same space and time. We chase this concept.
Dancing the same dance, you mean as a choreographed like dance?
Where's that? So we uploaded this movie on the YouTube. Please check later.
Yeah, I think what this is referring to, yeah, there's a dance at the end of the con, and then everyone danced that dance.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure what they mean by everyone, but like, I don't know if that includes the attendees or not, but June said he'll send the link.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah, they did something at Taitails. Like, you remember that, June? At Taitail, I think they did something similar, but it was like staff members.
これってポーラーが撮ったんだっけ？
ポーラーとあと日本人スタッフ何名かで一斉に撮ったやつの総編集って感じ。
総編集、OK、わかりました。まあいいです。まあそれはいいですか。
ポーラーでもいいけどね。
まあポーラー出してる。
Oh, Polar did it. Polar recorded.
Filmed this movie. Polar and some other Japanese staff.
I see now.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty cool idea. It seems like that in Asian countries, East Asian, I should say, that furries like to have this sort of like, well, someone will do a dance cover of a popular song, and then people will just copy whatever that dance cover is. That is not something that I've seen at a Western convention, but it seems to be that in countries like Japan and China and Korea and Taiwan, that there will be a dance cover to a J-pop song or Vocaloid song, and then people will make videos copying that dance cover. So that seems to be what is going on with what you described. So I think that's a pretty cool thing to have at a convention. So yeah, glad that you have that.
他のアジアのイベントでもその、
はい、
ダンスカバーして踊ったり、そういうのしてますねっていう。
そうですね。違いといえば、あれです。なんだろう。なんか踊ってまとめるのって個人がやってるんですよ。有志の個人がやっていて、ただ、ハッピーシンセサイザーとか、なんか、そういった簡単なやつって、別に誰でも練習しなくてもできるから、なんかイベントの合間に突然踊れる人だけ集まって踊ってくださいみたいなのって、実は案外なかったりして、なかったのでやってみたって感じですね。イベント公式が。
公式ではやってないっていう。
そう、公式では全然やっていない。みんな個人でやっていることが多くて、そのステージに上げるのではなくて、なんかもう、なんでしょう。ここの広場で集まって、とりあえずもう流すから踊ってくれっていうような感じで、だからみんなで踊ってる人を見るんじゃなくて、踊って参加をするっていうことを 念頭に入れたというか、まあちょっとニュアンスの違いなんですけど、そういうイメージですね。
あ
ちょっと今、日本語で言ってみます。
あ、はい。
はい。
Other foreign events, the dance project is not official, but in off, the dance is official project. So although many events are inferior in terms of the stage, so we lowered the hurdle for participation by having anyone dance at the event with the sense of being the star of the show. We want them to join and enjoy their dancing each other.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, we really just have one last question in this section about OFF. So our last question is, where do you see OFF in the next few years? Are there any plans of bringing it back after these initial waves of COVID?
We would like to host the next event. We have not yet decided on the venue or concept, but preparations are underway.
That's great. So now I have a reason to go to Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
really
all
wanna
do.
come.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to come. I want to come.
So we like to hold our next off next year.
I want
So we
to
are
go to
prepared.
Osaka.
Yeah. We will come.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for telling us more about the convention. Now let's go on to describe the attendees, the Japanese furries that go to these events. So what exactly can you tell us about Japanese furries? Can you describe their personalities for us?
I guess it's basically the same as that of other countries. Yeah. However, in Japan, some people refer to human characters with beast ears and tails as furry. Yeah, but we don't think that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which sometimes causes a controversy. But in
Right.
Japan, the human character with some animal parts, ears, tails, are called kemono.
Yeah, it's either kimono or kemono mimi. And I've seen that in lots of different anime, like, what was it? Kemono Friends. I think that's the most popular one now.
Yeah, I watched it before.
Yes, I think that Japanese furry enjoy kemono as a kind of entertainment. There is less focus on the idea of the fursuit, which is often seen in the West. Yeah, they tend to move or develop their characters rather than expressing themselves. Basically, they are pursuing the image they want to become rather than their true self.
Okay, so yeah, they're looking for the image that they want to be rather than who they are outside of the costume or the character. All right, yeah, that's interesting. I think that's kind of a common trend with other East Asian countries as well.
日本の獣について教えてください。彼らの特徴は何ですか？昔の獣コミュニティ、まあ、そうですね、ちょっと昔の話になっちゃいますが、昔の獣コミュニティは、結構、なんでしょう、作り手と受け手とかそういうのなく、結構、何らかのアーティストの集まりであった側面が強かったと思います。で、そのため、獣コミュニティに入るためには、その絵を描くとか、着ぐるみを作るなどの創作活動をする必要がある場合が多く、その当時に、やっぱコミュニティに入った人たちっていうのが、意外と今でもクリエイターとして現在進行形で絵を描いてたりとかイベントをやったりとか着ぐるみを作っている場合が多いように見受けられます。現在では海外と同じようにSNS のコミュニケーションや着ぐるみの売買の機会も増えたため、気軽にコミュニティに入れる状態にはなったと思いますが、結構ゆえに昔の獣コミュニティっていうのはなんか誰もがちょっとクリエイターじゃないと変な言い方ですけど立場がないみたいな感じがあったので、日本独自の雰囲気というものがあったかもしれないなと思います。この日本の獣についてって話だったので、日本独特のものっていうのを挙げてみました。はい。
I think that the older furry community had a strong aspect of being a gathering of artists of some sort. Therefore, in many cases, they need the ingenuity for joining the community. So I believe that those who joined the community then are still active today. Nowadays, as in other countries, there are more opportunities for communication through social media like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and buying and selling of fursuits. Hence, the older furry community may have had a uniquely Japanese atmosphere now.
Yeah, it's always nice when a community has their own unique atmosphere. I think that's what makes something like the Japanese community so special from the eyes of maybe the West or other Asian communities. Yeah, I think that's great.
Our next question here is just a little bit more simple. This is something I guess like I've always been more curious about myself. How old is the Japanese furry fandom roughly?
Yes. We suppose Japanese furry fandom is about at least 20 to 30 years old.
Mhm.
Yeah. It began in the late 1990s to 2000, and there may have been smaller communities before. And the major furry event was established in Japan in the late 2000, around 2010, like Chemocat, JMoF, Chemocon.
Mm-hmm.
So the Japan furry fandom is about at least 20 to 30 years old. Sorry, I'm not confident.
Mhm.
Yeah. But with the development of the internet, the community has grown dramatically. In particular, doujinshis and fursuits, especially in the last decade. However, the culture of anthropomorphic animals in Japan is quite old, very old. The picture scroll called Shouju Giga, which were painted around the 12th to 13th centuries, are very famous in Japan. And this is said to be the oldest cartoon as of now.
Wow.
I just looked it up. It looks really interesting.
Oh yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I helped
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
They even have a kitsune.
Yeah, kitsune, fox,
even make
and
it-
rabbit, and frogs. Yeah,
Hmm.
they're
That makes me
playing each
happy.
other. Yeah, it's said to be the oldest cartoon in Japan. Well, cartoon in the world.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So after that, about 200 years ago, in Edo era, the last of samurai era, in the early modern period, a lot of anthropomorphic animal paintings appeared, like Nekon Suzumi. You can find them on the internet, so please Google it. Type the ukiyo-e.
Ukiyo-e. All right.
Yeah, it's kind of a woodblock print.
Oh,
in
right.
Yeah, on the ukiyo-e.
Woodblock printing, I think it's called.
So Japanese furry culture is very old, but modern culture is just 20 to 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I joined the furry community in 2004, so I don't know much about the history of the community. However, I talked with people who were members of a furry fan club called Kemonas before. They told me that they were already following the furry culture in the late 1990s. How the story is probably has a history of almost 30 years.
I see. I only just joined the fandom recently in, was it 2017? I couldn't actually tell you when the furry fandom began in the States. Maybe Burger, do you have any idea? Was it like the 70s?
Yeah, so I've watched a documentary by, do you know the YouTuber Ash Coyote?
Yeah, I saw the documentary.
Yeah,
their
that documentary, if you remember, basically the beginning was around the 80s when people were just really fascinated by anthropomorphic animal characters and had like room parties and such. And then the first actual conventions didn't start until late 80s, early 90s.
I see.
In the States.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of the first ever conventions, can any of you tell us about the first Japanese furry meetings? What were they like? What were they focused on? Was it more about art or fursuits or just getting together and have dinner? What were they like?
I don't know the first furry meeting held in Japan, so I get difficult to answer. However, I guess that it was probably a small gathering of a few people. So, of course, in those days, there are no fursuits, so people tended to gather and have dinner or talk to each other. The first meeting I attended was a small community gathering. So most of the members were painters, camera artists, and we had dinner together. And sometimes we went to Pokemon Center and enjoyed shopping there.
All right, Pokemon, yeah.
Yeah, so we love Pokemon.
Well, yeah, it's a huge thing in Japan.
Yeah.
So how about KC? It seems like you've been in the fandom much longer. So, what can you tell us about that history?
日本の獣についてお願いします。
はい。 At the first furry meeting, furries who were the same age talked, ate, and sang karaoke together. At that time, no one had fursuits, so I didn't even know what the fursuit was.
Yeah, that does sound similar to in the West, where I believe fursuits were not actually gaining any popularity until the late 1990s or such.
日本で最初のどんな感じでしたか？はい。今から22年前のコミックマーケットが初めて獣界隈と触れるきっかけでした。その時はめちゃくちゃ獣サークルが少なくて、6サークルほどだったと思います。一番最初の出来事、そこで同人誌を買って帰っただけでした。
I think it was 23 years ago at the comic market. In those days, there were very few groups involved in kemono doujinshis, a furry fandom. So I think there were only 6 groups there. At that time, I just bought a doujinshi and went home. So I didn't communicate with them.
Yeah, it seems like things have gotten a little bit different. Maybe people are a bit more social in the conventions nowadays, even in Japan.
Still depends on person to person. I think he was just trying to emphasize his own personal experience. Maybe he's introverted.
Yeah, I get that.
Well, on this podcast, we have interviewed obviously several furries from Asia. And what we found that Japan seems to have a lot of influence on the different fandoms in Asia. The biggest example that I can think of is when we interviewed Pukan, and he told us that he believes that the Thai furry fandom has been influenced more by the Japanese furry fandom than the American one. And I was just curious what your guys' thoughts were on that.
Yes, I think so. But not only kemono culture, but also Japanese manga and anime culture have widely influenced other Asian countries, especially through internet. So they inspired Japanese subculture like manga, animation, game.
I really feel that like here in Taiwan, yeah, like the furry culture here has been greatly influenced by Japan. And it probably helps that Taiwan was colonized by Japan in the past. And so there's this sort of like direct influence, I would say, like direct influence that Japan has had. Yeah. It's very, very obvious. Like when I came to Taiwan, yeah, like there are a lot of like vestiges of Japanese culture. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember from Alder and Kyochi's episode that it wasn't from their episode on the podcast. It was the furries from abroad. I believe they said that sometimes in Thailand they consider Taiwan to be a second Japan.
Yeah, Japan Light. Japan Light, which I also agree with. Yeah.
Furries in Thailand often came to Japan, so I think they naturally read a lot of Japanese formalities and our ways. In fact, I often organized events with the Thai friends such as Kiyoshi and Polar Lion, so I think they were influenced by the exchange of ideas.
これって結局イベントのことだったのかよくわかんない質問だったね。そうですね、JMoFやオフでも海外コンベンションの主催が結構参加したり、またチラシ配ったりとか、結構来て、遊んで、また何か思って帰ることはきっと多いと思うので、多分そういったことでお互いに自然と見て影響されるのかなと思います。多分もう今後は逆にアジア諸国の台湾とか韓国とか中国のイベントからなんか日本がまた何かをそれを見て感じて参考にすることも増えていくんじゃないかなと思います。
I think that this will happen naturally because organizers of overseas furry conventions often attend Japanese conventions such as JMoF and OFFF. In the future, Japan might have more opportunities to be influenced by events in other Asian countries like Taiwan and China and Korea and so on.
Wow. I've never heard anyone say that. I think that would be cool. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I would love to see the collaboration. I would love to see the exchange of ideas and what sort of opportunities and benefits we can all get from that over here for conventions and events in East Asia. Yeah.
We mentioned this a little bit earlier in this episode, but there's something called doujinshis that if I'm not mistaken is made in Japan. Like it comes from Japan. I don't think we have this kind of equivalent in the US as far as I know. It seems like it's something that's like unique to Japan, and I just want to ask you guys, especially for the audience. Our audience is Western, so they may not know what a doujinshi is. So could you guys maybe just briefly explain what a doujinshi is?
Doujinshi has a history of more than 100 years and was originally self-published books by novelists in the literary world in Japan. Today, the majority of these manga, cartoon, illustration, they range from original manga works to derivative works. Doujinshi spans a variety of fields. One of the more unusual ones are illustrated reference book. For example, words, trains, costume, human body, and so on.
Huh, yeah. I would think that reference books are more like academic material rather than like someone self-publishing their works. That's interesting.
We think as a promise, JMoF weekly magazines such as Jump in Japan.
Yeah.
Moreover, the serialized manga in those magazines also published as individual books. Therefore, many people aspire to be manga artists and cartoonists.
Mm-hmm.
Drawing and publishing manga has increased because this is a method of self-expression. I guess that doujinshi is a process along the way. Publishing doujinshi may be for some people become manga artists, and for the other to use it as a communication tool. And the presence as exhibitions and sale events such as the comic market and kemoket may have generated even more doujinshi.
Now, I have not been to any doujinshi events in Japan, but I did enjoy the ones here in Taiwan. For instance, Furimosa. I think it was very cool to see that you could have a special event just for selling your own creative works and comics and other kinds of merchandise, where the focus is not so much about costumes or whatnot.
And that's a great example of like Taiwan adopting Japanese influences, because I feel like, the idea of doujinshi, like that's very common in Taiwan. That's extremely common. Like you have Taiwanese people producing their own published works, which again, I would imagine this comes from Japan, right? Like, as we just said.
Yeah. And what also comes from Japan is this idea of a kemono or kimono style. So how would you define kimono style?
We are also active in fursuit makers, but we are not sure if it is a kemono style or not. From what we understand, Japanese moe culture is a strong influence. In particular, within the category specialized in large eyes and small nose and short muzzle.
Yeah, that definitely describes kimono. Yeah.
I'm not sure the camels, but I guess it's based on Japanese traditional manga's design.
Right.
But he said large eyeballs, small noses, small mouths and mouths. I think.
So they look more like baby animals, basically.
Yeah.
Kinda. It doesn't always have to be that way, but kinda. Yeah, kemono style is something that we've talked a lot about on this podcast, and maybe more indirect than directly. And perhaps that's another episode for another time. Maybe we can just move on to our next question. This is another topic that always comes back. I always feel like Japan is this nation, this culture that has adopted some ideas from the West, but it's somehow balanced with these new Western ideas with its own traditional culture. But my question is, do you think the Japanese furry fandom is the same way? In other words, do you feel like the Japanese furry fandom has taken some ideas from the Western one and has made it something unique to Japan?
I think, especially in convention and fursuits, that we Japanese tend to adapt overseas styles. However, the design of manga and illustration for the traditional Japanese style for manga. So there are only a few foreign influence, I guess, especially in furry fandom in Japan.
着ぐるみ 界隈に関しては結構海外のファーリーファンダムの影響は大きいと思います。結構これは最初の頃の着ぐるみが割と影響を受けていて、そのトランスファーとかケモコンが始まったあたりぐらいの初期の方ですね。で、特にここ最近の獣スタイルが定義されるまでは割と海外の影響が多かったと思います。で、途中に今回僕は世代を3つに分けたんですけど、これまでが第1世代。で、途中第2世代でもある獣スタイル、先ほど話していた獣スタイルが確立されてから、ちょっと可愛い幼く見える感じの形式が結構、なんか中国の方、台湾でも流行りましたし、今中国とか韓国でめちゃくちゃ主流になっているので、その流れが移動して、で、逆に今現在日本ではちょっとマズルが長くて、目が切れ長で、ちょっと耳が長くてちょっと顔が細いみたいな感じの、なんかちょっと鋭いデザインラインが流行ってきて、僕は自分の中で勝手ながら第3世代の着ぐるみの流れっていうのが来ているなと感じています。次もあったのか。しかし、イラストとかアートに関しては、海外からの影響はあまり強くないと感じております。先ほどの漫画文化やアニメの文化などで、割と独自路線から外れることなく、結構今の今まで来て、で、それらのものがアジア諸国の方で結構、虎のデザインだとか、犬科のデザインとかでも、未だに、そういったものがメインストリームでいるなと思います。
As for the fursuit community, I think there was a great deal of influence from overseas furry fandom. I define this as the first generation, especially until the recent kemono style was defined. I think we were following the overseas style. After the kemono style was defined, the trend shifted to the Asian region. Now in Japan, I feel that the trend was the third generation of fursuits, with long faces, sharp eyes, and sharp nozzles. It's gaining strength. However, I don't think that there is much influence from abroad in terms of art and doujinshis culture. Originally, the influence of manga and anime culture was strong in Japan, and I think it has influenced other Asian countries without shifting too much from its original line.
Agreed. I don't live in Japan. I don't know much about Japan, but I think like this culture of manga and anime is really strong in Japan. And I don't see that being supplanted or I guess influenced, if I may use that word, anytime soon. Usually it's Japanese manga and anime influencing other countries. It's not the other way around, I feel.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially with the boom of anime inspired things that have come not just from in the furry fandom, but like in popular culture. Like some of the cartoons that I grew up watching that were, based in America, in the West, had that either subtle or very overt like anime style to it.
Yeah, like I think like Avatar is anime inspired. The Last Airbender.
Like Avatar, even like Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah, Powerpuff Girls, Craig McCracken, which is cool. Like I love seeing that. Yeah, like I grew up on anime. I didn't really grow up on manga, but I grew up on anime, and I always grew up like watching animated shows, and yeah, Japanese anime was no different for me. I liked Pokemon as a kid. I don't watch much of it nowadays. Yeah, I love yeah.
So this anime style and manga, that's what Japan is known for, but it also, people know Japan for its tourism and having so many like cool things to do inside of Japan. So let's say someone who hasn't been to Japan before wants to come and experience the great island of Japan. So what's one thing that each of you would recommend that they do? It could be going to a cool place, like a landmark. It could be trying a different kind of food that they've never had before. What was one thing each of you would recommend?
I think the food is really good. So I hope you will enjoy variety of food and drinks in Japan. For example, sushi, ramen, yakiniku, yakitori, tempura, tonkas, and the list is endless. Especially Tokyo is the best city for gourmet travelers, so you can enjoy not only Japanese food, but also cuisines from around the world. Furthermore, Tokyo has the largest number of Michelin-starred restaurants in the world.
I heard that before.
Yeah, but I have never been to Michelin stars restaurant because they are expensive and very prestigious. Yeah, I hesitate to go there. Of course, there are some Michelin restaurant starred restaurant in Osaka, so I recommend food in Japan. So if you like nature, the mountain climbing and camping also recommended. The most of Japan is mountainous, with some mountains ranges like the Alps in the Europe. Or if you are interested in Japanese subculture like a manga animation, so you should visit doujinshi stores. There are some doujinshi stores in Japan, especially Tokyo, Osaka, and also in any other big cities. You can buy doujinshis without going to exhibitions and sales events. But unfortunately, there are only a few furry items or doujinshi there. Oh, the railway is the best way to travel within Japan. Japan's rail infrastructure, including Shinkansen, is well equipped for comfortable travel for you.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the Shinkansen and other railways in Japan. And if there are anything similar to the ones I've been on in mainland China and in Taiwan, then I'm there for a treat. Yeah.
From what I remember, I think the park around the Todaiji Temple in Nara Prefecture is a fun place and to visit. There wild deer that roam free, but be warned if you have food on you, you were in for a big surprise. But the Todaiji Temple located behind it is a wonderful place with a deep history, so be sure to take a sightseeing tour.
Yeah, I believe Taiwan also has some sort of deer island along the the Matsu Islands?
I'm not sure. Like, is it?
It is one of the islands that's part of Taiwan. Yeah.
ぜひ日本に来たら大阪の新世界という場所がおすすめです。なんていうか、ここ最近結構秋葉原とか梅田とか難波とか開発が進んで、結構ビルが綺麗になっても、なんかこう、大阪の人情の街というか、なんかちょっと良かった頃の日本っていう雰囲気というよりは、なんか他の開発されたとこと国と変わらない味気のない景色にだんだんなっていくので、なんかこういうちょっと雑多とした、なんか大阪らしいというか、昔の街並みらしいところを見た方が楽しいんじゃないかなと思って新世界を進めました。
I recommend a place called Shinsekai in Osaka. Shinsekai means a new world.
New world.
In English. Shin means new, sekai a world. Yeah. Although it has recently been developed, so it became neat and tidy. So there are no difference between the Umeda Tokyo. Yeah. And it has become tasteless. But I like Shinsekai in Osaka because it has original atmosphere in there. I believe the familiar, beautiful scenery still remains in Shinsekai.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for being here on this podcast. It has been a wonderful conversation so far, talking about Japanese furries and Japanese culture and all that. Right now, we would like to hear where you want people to find you on the internet. Can you give us your social media?
So my Twitter account is at June Wanderer, JUN_WANDERER. So please follow me.
You can follow me my Twitter at Menesis MENESISU.
GEPPEI5959 よろしくお願いします。台湾の皆様も着ぐるみ花月をよろしくお願いいたします。
You can follow me at Kigurumi Katgetsu.
I'll help them with this one. So this is at KIGURUMIKAGETSU. I believe I got that right. So don't forget to follow them at Kigurumi Katgetsu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, and everyone please go to OFF if you have the chance to go to Osaka.
Oh, and Geppei also says, "Dear Taiwanese people, please take good care of our stuffed animal Kagetsu." So thank you, Taiwanese. I'll translate that Chinese for them. 台湾人就是希望你们可以照顾我们的Katgetsu的娃娃，谢谢谢谢。So that's for our Taiwanese furs.
Once again, thank you, June, Casey, and Geppei. Thank you so much for being on this podcast, for spending time with us. This has been the Fox and Burger podcast with me, Burger.
And I'm Michael the Matcha Fox.
And we will see you, everyone, on the next episode. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Goodbye. Bye.